Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Steven Brown, and in today's video, guys, it's the series where I don't provide the content. Sometimes you guys do, but hopefully not. Reacting to Armchair GMs on capfriendly. All right, so we got capfriendly fired up here. Let's click on this one. Dubas type deals. What are Dubas type deals? And okay, the first trade, Pierre Engvall, a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick for Jaden Schwartz with 50% salary retained, and Mike Reilly for a fourth and a third from Ottawa. And I should have mentioned this in my previous video, and I will leave that linked above the top here, but as we move closer to the deadline, teams are going to kind of decide what they are, if they want to stand pat and try to make the playoffs, or if they decide that they want to try to sell off assets and retool or even rebuild. Now, the St. Louis Blues aren't necessarily strangers to trading good players off of their roster while they're in the middle of a playoff hunt. They did it in 2018 with Paul Stastny, and they did it in 2017 with Kevin Shattenkirk. But I think that Jaden Schwartz is a step above Paul Stastny when they traded him, and I think that he's even a step above Kevin Shattenkirk when they traded him in 2017. If the Blues are going to trade Jaden Schwartz, it's because they believe that they have no shot at re-signing him, or they're trending in the direction of a rebuild. They have a lot of money tied up in guys like Jordan Binnington. They just signed Torrey Krug, Justin Falk even. They still got Vladimir Tarasenko for a couple of seasons, Ryan O'Reilly, Braden Shen as well. And they have Colton Parayko again for another year after this one. I don't know. To me, there's a difference between rebuilding and retooling. If you're trading Jaden Schwartz, there's no way that you can put yourself in a position to be good again next season or the year afterwards. And at that point, you're wasting 2 seasons of Vladimir Tarasenko, Ryan O'Reilly, Braden Shen, Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, and even the last couple of years that you might have of Colton Parayko. They got over $18 million in projected cap space for next season, and it doesn't look like they're going to re-sign Mike Hoffman or even Tyler Bozak. They're going to have a lot of money to give Jaden Schwartz and extend their window. Now, guys that are available on the St. Louis Blues right now that I can picture them trading, a Tyler Bozak, a Mike Hoffman. I know some people even talking about a David Perron, but again, I don't think that they would. Defenseman Vince Dunn is also talked about, but you got to be careful with him because he's very similar to Travis Dermott in the sense he's very, very sheltered. He's producing very, very good results in a very, very highly sheltered role. You got to be careful with players like that. Mike Reilly has exploded onto the scene in Ottawa this year. We've talked about him quite a few times in a couple of different videos, but the Ottawa Senators are a above average team offensively when he's on the ice, and they're an effective team defensively when he's on the ice. And Ian Mendes, who reports on the Ottawa Senators, described Mike Reilly as DJ Smith's most reliable defenseman. Now, what would it cost to get Mike Reilly away from the Ottawa Senators? And Mike Reilly, who's having a career season and who is a UFA at the end of this season, I think that the Ottawa Senators would want prospects who are closer to being NHL ready than just draft picks. I mean, geez, I clicked on like the fourth one down, but I should have clicked on the first one, really. Am I nuts? Let's give this guy his answer here. Nicholas Hjalmarsson with 50% retained for Travis Dermott and a 4th round pick. Okay, Frederik Andersen and a first for Chris Driedger. Okay, some interesting things to talk about there. Sam Bennett, 50% retained. Mikhail Abramov and a 5th. Not a fan of that. Nick Foligno for Alexander Kerfoot and Philip Krau. Okay, let's discuss because there's a lot of names here. Now we find our guy, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, in his familiar place, unfortunately, is on injured reserve. So I don't think that there's a trade there. And even if there was, you don't have to include Travis Dermott in that deal. But I do think that there is a trade here, and you're going to want to stick around for this idea. If you're not open to the idea of trading Frederik Andersen, and you don't want to hear any more of that talks, I will put in a little spot on the timeline that you can skip to. I know Freddie's got his 10-team no-trade list. The Coyotes probably are on that list, but on the off chance that they're not, maybe Austin sweet-talked Arizona a little bit to him. Maybe, it's got like a crazy, scene and like the desert and stuff. It's like the sunsets are really cool. By the off chance, maybe Arizona's not on that no-trade list. Frederik Andersen only makes $1 million in real salary this season, but he has a $5 million cap hit, and for most teams, that'd be really hard to absorb. I know it's a little bit problematic. This is a team that doesn't have a lot of money. So $232,000 might be a big deal, but they also don't have any draft picks, right? And if you can give them an opportunity to buy a draft pick, well, they might listen. So the Maple Leafs take back the ghost of Marian Hossa, throw him on LTIR. No one's going to question that. No one even knows where the guy is. At a formal retirement. Isn't he in the Hockey Hall of Fame? How's that legal? Yeah, I thought he was in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, yes, he is a Hall of Famer. Now, of course, Marian Hossa's contract, even though he makes $1 million in salary this season, I'm pretty sure that contract is insured. So the Arizona Coyotes aren't on the hook for any of that money. And they would be on the hook for $232,000 if they made the swap for Frederik Andersen. So you'd have to give them something to do that. Now, the Maple Leafs last year, it cost them $190,000 to be the middleman in this trade, where they retained some salary on behalf of the Blackhawks for the Vegas Golden Knights. And they received a 5th-round pick for $190K. So what are you giving the Arizona Coyotes here for $232,000? Maybe you put a premium on the money because it's a pandemic. Well, what are you giving them? A third? You know, they don't have draft picks. They also don't have prospects. Do you want a prospect? Do you want a prospect and a 5th-round pick to do that? Come on. There's a deal to be made there. Yes, we've talked about it. We've shown it before. The Maple Leafs, without touching their roster at all, can afford to add a guy like Taylor Hall. They can afford to add a guy like Nick Foligno and somebody else. Chris Johnson going on the record on the Fan 590 to say that he'd be shocked if the Maple Leafs didn't have at least 1 or 2 new forwards by the trade deadline next week. But the problem with that is that they would need a team to be the middleman in any of those scenarios if you want to acquire Nick Foligno and someone else, or just Taylor Hall. And finding a team to be the middleman in any of those deals might prove very difficult. But for the Arizona Coyotes, they currently have Darcy Kemper on injured reserve. They currently have Antti Raanta on injured reserve. They're in the playoff hunt right now. If Andersen can come back and be healthy, he can give them some starts. And of course, the Maple Leafs would have to go out there and get another goalie, because I'm not saying to run with Campbell and Hutch in the playoffs, but that would open up the cap space for you to acquire Taylor Hall, to acquire Nick Foligno and someone else, and a goalie. And for the Coyotes, they're not sacrificing anything off their roster. They're spending a little bit of money, but they're getting draft picks, which they desperately need. Now, Frederik Andersen and a first for Chris Driedger, that is wishes, hopes, and dreams. They are not doing that, because then that means that they would have Frederik Andersen and Sergei Bobrovsky as their goalies, and Florida's top 5 in the league right now. But Chris Driedger is a guy who I would look at if I'm the Maple Leafs in the offseason. Foligno for Kerfoot. I mean, Kerfoot probably brings more to a team offensively at both 5-on-5 and on a power play than what Foligno does. Foligno probably brings more to your team defensively at 5-on-5. Both players are pretty good on the penalty kill, but to me, over the last couple of seasons, the Maple Leafs have lost a lot of team speed. Connor Brown, Andreas Janssen, Kasperi Kapanen, Nazem Kadri. To lose Alex Kerfoot for Nick Foligno just makes them slower and slower. And I'm not a fan of that deal. If you're going to do that, you got to acquire someone else to offset the loss of speed. Yes, okay, and our boy Nazem Kadri logged on to CapFriendly here and submitted a trade that I wanted to talk about. Jamie Oleksiak is the guy that I want to talk about here. We talked about Jamie Oleksiak here on this channel on March the 24th, 2021, thanks to a direct message that I got from John Colpaster throwing the name out there. And the more that I looked at Jamie Oleksiak, the more and more sense that it made. And the thing that I highlighted right away, 6'7", 255 pounds, and from Toronto. Are you kidding me? And the guy can actually play hockey too. You open up the latest edition of 31 Thoughts here from April the 6th, and you scroll down all the way to thought number 8. And it's like, Elliot, would you kill ya to source your stuff here? No, but come on, that's really cool. A name gets suggested to me, we do research, we talk about him here in a video, and then a couple weeks later, it gets mentioned as an idea on 31 Thoughts. I'm not saying that the two are related whatsoever. I'm not saying that Elliot watched my video and then dug into it himself. It's not what I'm saying at all. I mean, it's cool to see that we're on about the same wavelength here. And yes, the Dallas Stars do have games in hand over the teams that are in front of them, but they're also like 6-7 points back of them all. And this is a team that has and had a lot of injuries to a lot of top players. Tyler Seguin was out for a while. Alexander Radulov is still out. Ben Bishop is out for an injury. He has been almost all season long. And Anton Khudobin is not having the type of season that he had in the bubble last year for this team. They're another team that's on the fence or on the bubble. They're going to have to decide what they want to do, especially for Dallas. You got to follow the money. They have $67 million committed to next season. That's only $4 million less than what they have committed right now. And if you scroll up, it's not just Jamie Oleksiak who they have to sign, who's a UFA. It's Miro Heiskanen. And unless that deal is very favorably backloaded, they're not going to be able to afford both of them. And that still doesn't get them close to having a full team. Even with those two guys signed, they're still about 5 or 6 guys short of a roster. By the way, JFresh Hockey does an amazing job here, but hockeyviz.com, that's where the heat maps are from. Evolvinghockey.com, that's where the expected goals above replacement stats are from. All excellent, excellent tools. You might not be able to afford all of them, but if you're interested in hockey stats, it's a couple of cups of coffee is basically what the cost is every month, and these guys do awesome work. I'll leave their links in the video description if you want to check them out, but trust me, they don't need my plugs. They're doing quite well on their own. But Jamie Oleksiak is a guy who handles more responsibility than a Travis Dermott or a Zach Bogosian. And if you're the Maple Leafs, you saw what happened when Jake Muzzin went down to injury. I mean, I'm just repeating myself. I've said this multiple times now. If they were to lose one of Jake Muzzin or TJ Brodie to injury, they don't have a guy to replace them. A guy like Morgan Reilly goes down. Morgan Reilly plays a lot of minutes, but Rasmus Sandin might be able to step in there and give you some value. They don't have someone to play the defensive minutes or the minutes on the penalty kill if Brodie or Muzzin were to go down. And Jamie Oleksiak's not as good as Jake Muzzin or TJ Brodie. I'm just going to be honest with you. But they don't trust Travis Dermott or Zach Bogosian with barely anything. Both those players are heavily, heavily sheltered, and they're fine. They're fine in the roles that they're playing, but if they had to play higher up in the lineup, if any of those two guys got injured, I would be very, very worried about that, and I don't see why the Maple Leafs are not interested in another depth defenseman, especially a guy like Oleksiak, especially a guy like Mike Reilly, John Merrill, who we've talked about, David Savard, a little bit more expensive in terms of cap hit, but I don't know why none of those guys are on their radar. It just doesn't make sense to me. But before we close out the video here, Nick Eagles, you hit me up on Twitter a while ago, and I can't remember if it was you that asked for the shout out or if it was me who offered to shout you out. And if that's the case, that's even worse because I totally forgot to do it, and I'm very sorry about that. So shout out to Nick and shout out to everyone, really, who watches the videos and clicks like and is subscribed here. We are less than 100 subscribers away from 4,000, and that absolutely blows my mind. I started doing this about a year and a half ago consistently, part-time, really. I mean, I'm a journalism student, and I am still learning. That's an important thing to stress here, especially with the salary cap nuances and the calculations and the advanced analytics. I am trying my best, and if I do make a mistake, I'm not afraid to admit that. So make sure to like the video if you did like and subscribe for, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, just remember, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're in first place again.